Welcome to Common Grounds, a connect group of Sagemont Church in Houston, Texas. Thank you for joining us for A House Divided as we continue looking at the second half of 1 Kings. We hope you enjoy today's lesson.
Good morning. It's been a while since I've been up here, so y'all got to bear with me. I haven't taught in 11 months, so I'm a little rusty. But we're going to try to get through this, and I know we will. So before we start, I do want to ask a question. We all know about name brand products out there. We do love them, Clorox being one, Lysol being another. But I have a question for you. What off-brand product do you love that you find comparable to a name brand product, and why do you love it? If you go Costco and about how they go to the same companies, come on. Well, I used to sell cosmetics for a number of years for Nordstrom, the department store. And I started off just doing skincare and then eventually got into the full cosmetics because I was a manager for them. And it's interesting is if you look and there's probably, 70, 80 brands in there. Dior, Chanel, Lancome, MAC, all these different brands. But it's amazing when you start looking around how many are owned by Estee Lauder. I think y'all be surprised that I only use this mascara. Well, guess what? They also own that one. I mean, and we find that we stick to name brand sometimes purely because it's a status symbol. But a lot of the times I find that we will switch over to generic because we do find it comparable. Prime example, H-E-B. I don't know about you, I don't buy name brand at H-E-B. If it's not H-E-B brand, I don't buy it. It's just cheaper and it's great quality. So what other reasons why would we buy off-brand? Price, convenience, although I don't buy Randall's. Their off-brand is not very good, just saying. It's not. Well, they're on the north side. They're not so much over here. Well, sometimes off-brand products are exactly the same as name brand, but other times they're noticeably different. You can see that once again, Hill Country Fair and H-E-B brand. Those two, same company, but there's a difference in them. We may find ourselves content with an imitation product because it's cheaper, which is the cost. There's convenience or it's consistent experience. But not all imitations live up to the original. Now, obstacles in life, they can cause us to take shortcuts or imitations to bypass what really concerns us. These are inconsequential, as it might be with an off-brand cereal purchase for a cheaper breakfast option. But as it is with two kings in our scripture today, and often can be, some imitations can have greater spiritual consequences. So last week, Cliff was covering the first part of 1 Kings 12, and he got all the way to verse 24. So last week, he was speaking on the importance of having proper counsel, listening to said counsel, and following that out. And then he also shows the dangers of what happens when you receive bad counsel, bad wisdom, and you walk in that. As you saw, Rehoboam last week didn't listen to his advisors that his father had. Instead, he listened to the young advisors, his friends that grew up alongside him. And as a result, the kingdom was splitting. You saw how the northern tribes under Jeroboam were going away, and the southern Judah was by itself. Now, we're going to be picking up there this morning. We're going to be starting off at verse 25. But before we get there, Timothy Keller, a quote that he said is, "Anything in life can serve as an idol or a counterfeit God." Anything can serve as a counterfeit God, especially the very best things in life. Now, Keller, he defined an idol as anything that absorbs your heart and imagination more than God. Now, Judges 17:6 states, "In those days there was no king in Israel, and everyone did whatever seemed right to him." Once they had a king, generally speaking, as the king went, so went the nation. Now, David led the people in faithful worship. Solomon ended his reign in idolatry and with the coming split of the kingdom. Now, two nations, two kings, they could either rule being blessed by the Lord, or they could take another route. Unfortunately, they chose the latter. Now let's start off at verse 25 of 1 Kings 12. Jeroboam built Shechem in the hill country of Ephraim and lived there, and from there he went out to build Penuel. Now, from the onset of Jeroboam's reign, you could see that fear had dictated his choices that he had made, and that he was driven by this fear. And Jeroboam built Shechem in the same place where Rehoboam previously, in verse 1 of chapter 12, was crowned king. So he wanted to be central, just as Rehoboam was in the new kingdom, and he immediately built a position of defense at Penuel across the Jordan to defend against the Gileadites. Now I'm going to give you, it's awesome that we're actually on the map here, so I'm going to show you really quick. So he was crowned king, Rehoboam was, right here at Shechem. And then that's where Rehoboam decided to build his kingdom when he started. And immediately it says about how he built a place of defense at Penuel. Penuel is right across the Jordan River. That is where the Gilead was. So there was an immediate fear that he had that the people of Gilead were going to want to attack him. They thought him weak, so he immediately had fear. Now, the one thing I want to find out, though, is why did he immediately have this fear? So why did he have this fear? I don't get it. Because if you go back and you read in 1 Kings 11, there was a prophet, Ahijah was his name. And he went to Jeroboam. And in verse 38, he said, and after that, if you obey and walk in my ways and do what is right in my sight, in order to keep my statutes and my commands as my servant David did, I will be with you. I will build you a lasting dynasty, just as I built for David. And I will give you Israel. I will humble David's descendants because of their unfaithfulness, but not forever. Therefore Solomon tried to kill Jeroboam, and he fled to Egypt, and the king of Shishak of Egypt, where he remained until Solomon's death. He was immediately given a promise in chapter 11 by Ahijah. I'm going to divide the kingdom. If you follow my statutes, you follow my commands, I will establish your kingdom, and you will have a lasting kingdom, as I promised my servant David. Now, there could have been something amazing here. There could have been two godly nations in that region to go out and share the truth of God. But instead, he decided to go another direction. And that direction, unfortunately, dictated the direction of a nation for their entirety. Verse 26, Jeroboam said to himself, the kingdom might now return to the house of David. If these people regularly go to offer sacrifices to the Lord in the Lord's temple in Jerusalem, the heart of these people will return to their Lord, King Rehoboam of Judah. They will kill me and go back to the king of Judah. From a position of fear and of self-preservation, Jeroboam was under the belief that if the people kept regularly returning to Jerusalem to offer sacrifices to the Lord, their hearts would turn back to Rehoboam and, in turn, kill him. So how soon did he forget the promise that was given to him from God through Ahijah the prophet? As a result of his fear and forgetting the promises, he had determined to offer a cheap substitute of godly worship, and the results were catastrophic. So I want to stop here. Question for you. What are ways that you have forgotten the promises of God that he has made you, and you took things into your own hand? And how did that work out for you?
I find it interesting. So there was a professor I used to have when I was at the College of Biblical Studies, Professor Allen. Awesome guy. And one of the things that he does, he is a licensed Christian counselor, but he's also a minister. He's a preacher. And one of the things that he taught is he said about strongholds in our lives are built up because we lack trust in the promises of God. We lack trust in the characteristics of God. And a lot of the idols that we build up in our lives, I don't know about you, myself personally, a lot of the idols that I have personally built up in my life are a direct result of a lack of faith or trust in either a characteristic of God or a promise of God. His nature is true. What he says about himself is true. So for you or for me or for anyone else, the issues that I've struggled with in the past was money. How am I going to provide for myself? I need to make sure that I get on top of it. The Lord humbled me in that experience. I remember specifically, I'm going to just briefly touch on this. When I was working at Nordstrom, I remember for a period of probably 3 months, and I was a believer at this time. At a period of about 3 months, it seemed like if I sold $2,000 in a day, I would have $1,900 in returns. If I sold $4,000, I would have $3,500 in returns. It was like I could never get ahead in what I was doing at work. And I was actually having to cash out my vacation time each pay period just to offset the money I wasn't making due to commissions. And finally, one day I hit that breaking point, and I hope that if you're not there, that you get there soon. I hit that breaking point, and I remember laying in a hot tub of water, not even taking a bath, just laying there. Have you ever been miserable? You just want to lay down and not do anything? I was there. And I'm laying there, and I'm talking to God, and I talk in my mind to God a lot. If y'all don't, I'm sorry. I love talking through my mind. I mean, he can read my thoughts. I mean, why not talk to him? So I'm laying there, and I remember talking to God, and I'm like, Lord, you have given me the ability, you have given me the skills, you have given me this job. I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm doing. Well, key word, I know what I'm doing. And in that moment, as I'm talking to you now, just as clear, it just touched my heart. And all I heard was, go read. That was what was impressed upon my heart in that moment. So I'm in the living room with a towel, dripping wet, freezing, because you know when you get out of a hot shower and you're in the air conditioning, they don't feel so good. Freezing, and I immediately opened my daily devotional for the day. And what it said in that moment was, one of the greatest gifts that God can give you are the skills and the abilities to use in life to glorify Him. But when you no longer rely on Him, the giver of said skills and abilities, He will remove His hand of blessing to show you that He was sovereign and in control of it all. And in that moment, I had to humble myself once again and say, Lord, it's you that made this happen, not me. It's you that brings these blessings, not me. It's you that provides. It's you that protects. It's you that restores. It's you that builds. It's you. There's nothing I can do in my own life to help me. Are you in a place where you're still trying to do things on your own to help yourself instead of trusting in God or His nature or characteristics? If you are, humble yourself, because the journey is going to take you a long way before you finally hit that breaking point. It's better to humble yourself before a mighty God instead of having a mighty God humble you before Him. Aristotle, he states, the human heart, a dark and bottomless abyss, has the potential for both great good and great evil. Let's pick up on verse 28. So the king sought advice. Then he made 2 golden calves, and he said to the people, going to Jerusalem is too difficult for you, Israel. Here are your gods, who brought you up from the land of Egypt. He set up one in Bethel and put the other in Dan. This led to sin, and the people walked in procession before one of the calves all the way to Dan. Now Jeroboam's heart devised a great evil, and he did this by appealing to the people's comfort and self-interest in their service and worship to God. Firstly, in verse 28, Jeroboam states that going to Jerusalem is too difficult and offers a substitute in the form of idolatry. The creating of 2 golden calves and placing one in Bethel and the other in Dan. This is a repeat of what Aaron did in Exodus 32:4. He took gold from them, fashioned it with engraving tools, and made it into an image of a calf. Then he said, Israel, these are your gods who brought you up from the land of Egypt. It didn't work out so well at that time for those right there next to that mountain. Now, question for you to think on, not answer. This is a rhetorical one. I want you to think on this. Are we making choices in our life and in our worship from a place of comfort and self-interest, or from selflessness and dying to self as to be a living sacrifice as we are called to be? Jeroboam in this moment was appealing to self-interest and self-seeking worship. Are we doing that in our own lives? Do we only turn to God when things are difficult? Do we only turn to God when everything starts to fall apart? Or are we turning to God daily, moment by moment, saying, Lord, I'm seeking you. I'm seeking your will, your way for my life, so you can be glorified. Because in seeking you, it's not about me anyway. It's about glorifying you, which is what you were created for. Verse 31. Jeroboam also made shrines in the high places and made priests from the ranks of the people who were not Levites. Now Jeroboam, he instituted a pilgrimage. Once again, I'm going to go back here. Once again, he instituted a pilgrimage. He built one altar of the golden calf right here at Bethel, and he built the other at Dan. Right? Now, he instituted his own service and his own form of worship. Now, in the 7th month, in Jewish culture, they actually all pilgrimage to Jerusalem. And the reason is because of the Day of Atonement. They're there to honor God and offer sacrifice for the Day of Atonement, as well as the Feast of Booths. They would travel to Jerusalem in the 7th month. Jeroboam, knowing this, did not want his people, his subjects, to leave his land, because he was fearful, as you saw earlier, fearful that their hearts would turn back to Rehoboam and service to the Lord. So instead, he built one altar at Bethel and the other at Dan. So instead of everyone pilgrimaging down to Jerusalem to offer sacrifice to God, he led them away from Jerusalem. So not only did he physically lead them away in their pilgrimage, he led them away spiritually, which led the nation into collapse eventually. Now, verse 31, in creating the shrines in the high places that are filled with the priests, not of Levites, which all priests were to be of Levi. You can see that in Numbers 3, verses 5 through 13. Let's pick up in verse 32. Jeroboam made a festival in the 8th month on the 15th day of the month, like the festival in Judah. He offered sacrifices on the altar, and he made this offering in Bethel to sacrifice to the calves that he had made. He also stationed priests in Bethel for the high places that he had made. Now Jeroboam made the festival on the 8th month, as I was stating, on the 15th day to replace the observances that were to take place in Jerusalem. These festivals were changed and defiled by Jeroboam. But the burning of incense and offerings before the idols that he set up in Bethel and in Dan. Now what Jeroboam introduced to Israel is called syncretism. It's a blending of religions. He sought to mix the worship of the Lord with its priesthood and sacrifices and festivals with the trappings of paganism and idol worship. Jeroboam's false worship would mar the northern kingdoms for the whole existence as a nation. Now the Levites, as they are the true priests called to priesthood in Numbers 3, were furious of what was taking place. But they were also fearful because a new king was coming in and instituting false worship in the land. So the Levites all got up and decided to leave. You can see this. It says the Levites were righteously angry at the appointment of non-Levites to lead worship, so they left and moved south to Judah. 2 Chronicles 11, 13 through 17. It says, the priests and Levites from all the region throughout Israel took their stand with Rehoboam. For the Levites left their pasture lands and their possessions and went to Judah and Jerusalem, because Jeroboam and his sons refused to let them serve as priests of the Lord. Jeroboam appointed his own priests for the high places, the goat demons and the golden calves he had made. Those from every tribe of Israel whom he had determined in their hearts to seek the Lord their God followed the Levites to Jerusalem to sacrifice to the Lord their God of their ancestors. So they strengthened the kingdom of Judah and supported Rehoboam, the son of Solomon, for 3 years, because they walked in the ways of David and Solomon for 3 years. Now the Levites, they were righteously angry about these appointments, and they left and pilgrimaged back to Jerusalem. Now John F. Kennedy had a quote. It says, the goal of education is the advancement of knowledge and the dissemination of truth. And for the northern kingdom, they were no longer being taught truth, and truth was no longer being disseminated in the nation. Quick question, I'll let one person answer if y'all want to. Question for you. Do you see this in churches today or even in your own life? And if so, how? For me, I see in churches today, you can turn on the television. Unfortunately, that's where a lot of the people in this country and the world over turn to see somebody preaching the gospel. But they're no longer worshiping God, but rather they're worshiping and seeking the blessings of God without God himself even being in the mix. We know it as prosperity gospel. I would say not to put my own family on blast. I love them. If they do hear this, y'all know that. Not to put my family on blast, but there is a term, if y'all never heard of it, it's called CEO Christians. The only time you ever see them in church and grace the presence of these doors is on Christmas and Easter only. CEO Christians. That's about all the time you're going to see them, which are why we usually make a lot of room for them to come in. So we see the detriment that resulted from this idolatry in the northern kingdoms. It says that he made festivals for the Israelites and offered sacrifices on the altar and burned incense. Now, if you read chapter 13, which we're not going to be teaching on this morning, you're going to see what results from this idolatry. You're going to see what results from offering sacrifices upon these altars that he had built. A powerful story, but it was also a word of warning for those that tried to go and reprove and correct, as you'll see with the prophet that came to reprove him. So, do read chapter 13. You'll see there are some great things to take away from chapter 13. But what we're going to pick up now is we see what happened with Jeroboam and his idolatry. Now, inversely, let's look at Rehoboam and his idolatry. Today we're going to be picking up on 1 Kings 14, and we're going to start off at verse 21 and go through 26. Now, Rehoboam, Solomon's son, reigned in Judah. Rehoboam was 41 years old when he became king, and he reigned 17 years in Jerusalem, the city where the Lord had chosen from all the tribes of Israel to put his name. Rehoboam's mother's name was Namna. I cannot pronounce it. If that's wrong, forgive me. The Ammonite. And it says, Judah did what was evil in the Lord's sight, and they provoked him to jealous anger more than all that their ancestors had done with the sins they had committed. Now, Rehoboam, as you saw back in Chronicles, which Cliff touched on last week, he had a zeal and he had an anger, which he thought was a righteous anger, when the northern tribes under Jeroboam wanted to separate. And when he returned to Judah, out of the tribes of Judah and the tribes of Benjamin, he mustered up a troop army of 180,000 people to go back and to reclaim the land. Before the same prophet, Ahijah, once again said, Ahijah came back to him and said, no, you're not going to go back. This is of the will of God. Leave it alone. So he had a zeal and a fury in attempting to defend the kingdom from splitting. You can see it in 1 Chronicles 11, verse 1. He had a zeal, but he did not have the same zeal and fury in attempting to defend Judah from idolatry that was leading them away from God. He ultimately proved to be a weak and permissive king. He abandoned the love of the Lord, and he and all Israel with him. Rehoboam allowed Judah's idolatry to run rampant. 2 Chronicles 12, verse 1. When Rehoboam had established sovereignty and royal power, he abandoned the law of the Lord, he and all Israel with him. As Rehoboam ascended to the throne at the age of 41, he had plenty of time to learn the wayward ways of his father beforehand, Solomon. Solomon was married to 700 wives and had 300 concubines. He did bring peace to the land of Israel, but the peace that he brought to the land, just because it was absent of war, was not truly a peace that they had with God, due to the idolatry that was brought into Israel. Now, Rehoboam pursued peace in a similar manner by permitting whatever kind of worship the people wanted, rather than prompting obedience to the Lord as his grandfather David had done. Matthew 5:29. If your right eye causes you to sin, gouge it out and throw it away. For it is better you lose one of your parts of your body than for your whole body to be thrown into hell. Honestly, removal of a body part to fight sin is extreme. But Jesus was using hyperbole to communicate how serious we need to be about getting idolatry out of our lives. Now, Rehoboam had both authority and opportunity to root out the worship of other gods in Israel, but he did not, and it cost him dearly. Verse 23, they also built for themselves high places, sacred pillars, and Asherah poles on every high hill and under every green tree. There were even male cult prostitutes in the land. They imitated all the detestable practices of the nations the Lord had dispossessed before the Israelites. Now, when God, he brought the Jews into the promised land, he commanded them to be holy and to be set apart. In verse 23 and 24, we can see the practices that were now invading the land of Judah under Rehoboam. These were the same practices that the Canaanites in the southern region of the land practiced before Israel came in and conquered by God's grace and mercy. Is it any wonder why God commanded Israel to utterly destroy the Canaanites and the other nations before entering the promised land? Deuteronomy 7, 1 through 6. When the Lord your God brings you into the land you are entering to possess, and he drives out many nations before you, the Hittites, the Girgashites, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, the Jebusites, 7 nations more numerous and powerful than you. And when the Lord your God delivers them over to you and you defeat them, you must completely destroy them. Make no treaty with them and show them no mercy. You must not intermarry with them, and you must not give your daughters to their sons or take their daughters for your sons, because they will turn your sons away from me and to worship other gods. Then the Lord's anger will burn against you, and he will swiftly destroy you. Instead, this is what you are to do to them. Tear down their altars, smash their sacred pillars, and cut down their Asherah poles, and burn their carved images. For you are a holy people belonging to the Lord your God. The Lord your God has chosen you to be his own possession out of the people of the face of the earth. In the beginning, coming into the land, God told them, be set apart, utterly destroy all their idolatry that is in the land. I called you to be holy and to worship me in truth. Get rid of their practices so you can stand before me blameless. Ammonite, his mother was an Ammonite. That is where this was coming in from. Right? He had 700 wives. So trust me, there were a lot of other deities and idolatries that were flooding the land as a result of Solomon's disobedience. And Rehoboam walked in it with him. He had the ability to change it and to change the trajectory of the land, but he allowed it to happen as he wanted to maintain the peace that his father brought. Now, Israel did not keep God's covenant laws, which had set them apart from the pagans around them. So God allowed Judah's enemies to seize the treasures out of the temple and palace. Another sign of weakness, Rehoboam had to replace the gold shields his father had made with inferior bronze shields. Verse 25. In the 5th year, King Rehoboam, King Shishak of Egypt, went to war against Jerusalem. He seized the treasuries of the Lord's temple and the treasuries of the royal palace. He took everything. He took all the gold shields that Solomon had made. King Rehoboam made bronze shields to replace them and committed them into the care of the captains of the guards, who protected the entrance of the king's palace. Question for you. Are we making cheap substitutes to replace the greater and more superior option that God has promised due to our own disobedience or idolatry in our lives? I ask, are we getting into relationships with an unbeliever? Are we dimming or hiding our light to blend into a world around you to be liked and admired? Are we compromising our values to be liked or promoted? Are we doing things in our own life to take glory and honor away from God so we ourselves can be promoted? Do we make crude jokes? Do we look at things that we shouldn't? Are we making idols in our own lives and settling for cheap substitutes over the true gifts and glory that God has promised us? Now, Rehoboam, he failed to trust in God's covenant, just as Jeroboam did. Judah's lack of wise, godly leadership caused them to spiral into idolatry, as with the brothers to the north. Judah did not even pretend to say they were worshiping God alone. They either abandoned the worship of the Lord or placed him as equal to other gods in their hearts and spaces of worship, thereby breaking the first and second commandments along with the northern kingdom. I am the Lord your God. You shall have no strange gods before me, and you shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain. Now, many of the kings of Israel and Judah led their people astray into idolatry and imitated the world. But a true king leads people in worship faithfully to the one true God. Now, Jesus came as this true king, for he is the way, the truth, and the life, and no one comes to the Father except through him. John 14:15. So let us serve and worship him faithfully by tearing down and burning the idols in our own lives today.
Thanks for listening. If this week's message helped you, feel free to share it with a friend.
At Common Grounds, we are striving to help people grow in their faith and build community by finding common ground in Christ Jesus. Until next time, hope y'all have a great week.